Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. Today we are going to be taking a look at the DK Hybrid DPS build that I have for Summerset chapter. Now please remember the hybrids are still not as good as a pure DPS class, but they can work very well in this update. A lot better than most people probably assume. With a good rotation and a good setup, you can possibly pull as close to 32k. So they are viable for all content in PvE. In PvP, they're amazing right now. If you want to check out PvP builds, I suggest you go check out Christopher's channel. He does a lot of PvP builds, and he does a really good job with the PvP setup. So go check his stuff out. So let's go ahead and take a look at the stats on this. As you guys can see, we are sitting at a 28k magicka with a 17k health, 28k stamina. Our recoveries aren't that good, but in PvE, it's a little different than PvP. You want to have higher pools than you do recovery, but you still have a decent amount of recovery, so you can play off that really well. Spell damage wise, 32-23, and weapon damage 32-23. You can see our spell crit is 42% with a 45% weapon crit. Our resistances are in a good space, 15k spell resist with a 11k physical resist, which is in itself a pretty good place. We are running 2 Mundo Stones because we are using the Twiceborn Star with this, and we are using the Lover Mundo Stone, which gives us extra physical and spell penetration, and we are running the Thief Mundo Stone, which gives us extra weapon and spell critical. We do have Major Prophecy at all time because we do have Inner Light on both bars, and then on top of that we have Max Magicka and Stamina Food. Taking a look at that food, it is Grapes and Ash Yam Falafel. This gives you Max Magicka, Max Stamina at 4,936 for 1 hour, and is the better food for this build. You can use the Tri-Stat food, but unfortunately, the thing with Tri-Stat food, you end up with more in your... You end up with a lot more health than you need. So it's not quite as good because, as you can see, we have nothing in health here. This is all from gear and all from CP and stuff. So when you do the Tri-Stat food with this build, just so you can see, you do end up with a little bit less on the Magicka stamina, but you do get a better health pool. But that's about it. This is why we use the Grapes and Ash Yam Falafel. This is a lot better overall. It gives us that 28k setup. So going into the gear sets, the main monster set that you want to get for this build, and it's probably the better of any of them for a hybrid, is the Dama House set. Now you can use other sets depending on the class, depending on the benefits you get from a class, a race combination, and you can use other sets. But I find Dama House to be the better of the sets because it gives you the Max Magicka, Max Stamina on the 1 piece, and then on the 2 piece, you get this, whenever you deal damage, it does a ring of molten earth or fire around you, and one does magic damage, one does physical damage. In the case of this setup, this particular setup, we actually get the last bonus, which is magic or spell damage, or weapon damage. We get the weapon damage because the way Dama House works is it's based off of how much weapon damage you have or spell damage you have on the character to begin with. That represents your overall. So in this case, we have a lot of weapon damage. We get the 200 weapon damage. Going on to the gear itself, we are running Pelinals. Pelinals gives you max health. The 2 piece gives you max health. 3 piece gives you stam recovery. 4 piece gives you magic recovery, and then the 5 piece, your spell and weapon damage both become the highest of 2 values. So whatever is higher, so whatever one you're using the most of, weapon damage or spell damage, it will copy that for the other. So if you go all spell damage, it's going to make your weapon damage equivalent. If it's all weapon damage, it's going to make your spell damage equivalent. That's why these numbers haven't changed. They're identical. Is because we have equivalent exchange because of Pelinals. Now with the Twiceborn Star set, which we are using on the jewelry and the dual wield, and this is going to take people a while to get a hold of. Twiceborn Star comes in, can be crafted now into jewelry and weapons. So it could always be crafted in weapons, but now it can be crafted in jewelry. But it's a 9 trait, so you're going to have every trait in the game to use this. If you don't have access to 9 traits, you can use Shackle Breaker instead. You just won't get the benefits of either the lover or the crit. So you're going to be trading those off. But you're really going to want the Twiceborn Star to make this build really, really shine. So as you can see, we have the health, stamina, magicka on this with the 2, 3, and 4 piece. The 5 piece, you can have 2 Mundus Stone bonuses at the same time. That's why this fits so well with it, is we can have that bonus of both Mundus Stones. So we are running that Lover Mundus Stone. We are running that the Thief Mundus Stone to give us the crit and the penetration. Both of them work out really good with this. And on the jewelry, you can go with a different combination if you want. You can go 1 infused, like the necklace infused, and then go arcane here and a robust here. This way you get a little bit more stamina and magicka pool, but still go all weapon damage on it all, which makes it a little bit better for you, but not by much. Excuse me. But not by much. It gives you another 800 and something, so it will put you at about 29k magicka stamina with this build. Now this is a Dark Elf. Dark Elves do make better hybrids than any of the other races, but if you were, say, a Wood Elf with this, or you were a Nord with this, or you were an Orc with this, or any other race that has stamina, magicka combination besides the Khajiit, any other race, you would end up with a lot better. Now Khajiits can also play this, but they're going to have a lot lower pools, stat pools, but they also end up with a lot more physical crit, so you can actually make them a little differently and gain that greater benefit to where you can use more magic in them, or more magic crit in them, and you don't need so much in stamina crit. So that's kind of a nice trade-off there. And then, of course, moving on down to the weapons, we are running a dual wield on the front bar. On the dual wield, we are running a Nirnhoned weapon on the main hand with a fire enchant. Now the reason I chose fire enchant is because we are a dark elf. We get a 7% increase in fire damage, so that also applies to the fiery enchant that we have on the weapon, so that gets boosted by that 7%. And with the way our champion points are, we have a 17% increase in our fire damage, so it kind of plays on this better than a poison enchant. Moving on over here, we do have the infused weapon with the weapon damage on it. So you want Nirnhoned main hand infused offhand, and on this one you want to have that increased weapon damage and spell damage, so it's proccing quite a bit. On the back bar though, we are using a lightning staff with a shock enchant. Now you don't have to use a lightning staff with a shock enchant. You can use an inferno staff with a shock enchant, because it's going to give you overall the best results. But it's your choice and how you choose to set it up. I like this one with a lightning staff because I like that greater uptime of off balance with this build. Now that we've seen that, let's go ahead and move on to the skills. On the skills, there's a lot of combinations you can set up for the skills. This one I just found to be the one that I prefer. So make sure that you get all your class passives unlocked. Make sure you get all your weapon passives. Like for this, the dual wield, you want all the dual wield passives, and you want all the destruction staff passives. Armor, you want to make sure you have your light, medium maxed out. Light armor, you want the top 3, and heavy armor, you want the top 3. With the world stuff, you can be a vampire with this, which is really nice because they get 10% more stam recovery and magic recovery. So it boosts that up a little bit more, which is kind of nice. And there's some other things that come with the vampire that can help play with this build well. Werewolf is another good one you can go with this. And then going on to the guild stuff over here. Fighters Guild, you want to make sure you fill out all the Fighters Guild passives because you are using Dawnbreaker on the main bar. And that's going to give you another 3%, plus the Flawless Dawnbreaker is going to give you another 5%. So an 8% increase in your weapon damage on the front bar. Plus, you're going to get Banish the Wicked, which is going to give you really good ultimate gen in trash fights, so you can keep up that setup. So, yeah. Mages Guild, you can go with Persuasive Will. You do want Magic Controller because you are using Inner Light on both bars. This will make that Inner Light give you a 7% increase in magic damage, or in your Max Magicka, which is really good. Moving on to the Psijic Order, you can use some of the Psijic Order abilities if you wanted to with this. Like, you could change out the Whip for, say, one of the two imbue weapons, like Elemental Weapon or Crushing Weapon, either one. Or you could even change out the back bar so you have Accelerate back there instead for the Minor Force. So you could use one of those two abilities. The other abilities you really won't need for this build. But with this, you can also get the passive Spell Orb, which does damage also, both magic and stamina, depending on which one is higher. So you can get those orbs to proc and do extra damage, which is kind of nice. On to Undaunted, you want to make sure you get the Undaunted passives. In the Alliance skills, you're not using any, so there's no reason for any of it. I do have Warhorn on the back bar, which I'm going to change out here in a second. Dynamic, you want to make sure that you have all the passives on this build. A Dark Elf is the best for a hybrid, so that's why I have it set up as a hybrid. And then moving on to the Craft, Alchemy, medicinal use, really good. And then on the Provisioning, you want to make sure you get Gourmand and Connoisseur, especially on this build, because you are using a blue food. You want that 20 minutes extra. Alright, so going over the skills on the bar. Starting with the main bar, we do have Molten Whip. This does fire damage, and then also it can set, if you strike an enemy that is immobile, stunned, or off balance. So, yeah, so it does damage, but it says if you do that. And then while slotted, I don't get why it says that, but while slotted, your spell and weapon damage is increased by 101 for Ardent Flame abilities. So this ability and this ability are actually boosted by 101 spell damage or weapon damage, so that's kind of nice. So Molten Whip does a lot of damage. The next ability we have is Rending Slashes. This does a lot of damage also. It does a lot of damage on the initial hit, and then it does damage over time, which is really good. It also reduces the movement speed of the enemy by 40% for that 9 seconds. The next ability we have on our bar is Burning Embers. Now this does a lot of damage. It does 4,251 flame damage, as you can see, additional 14,000 damage over 10 seconds, and then it heals you for 75% of the total damage inflicted when the effect ends. And if you reactivate this, like say you apply this in your rotation, if you come back around and this is still active and you hit it again, it'll heal you. It'll still heal you. So next ability we have is Deadly Cloak. This is really good. It does damage over time. It does a tick of damage every 3 seconds for 15 seconds. So it'll tick about 4 times in total. And then on top of that, it also does a damage shield on you, basically. A Razor Shield for shrapnel, reducing the damage you take from area of effect attacks by 25%. So this keeps you in the fight a little bit better. Next ability we have on our bar is Inner Light. This is here for the Max Magicka and the Spell Crit. And then on the last skill here, we have Flawless Dawnbreaker. Flawless Dawnbreaker is an amazing skill for this setup because it does a lot of damage and it gives you a back. It gives you weapon damage while it's active. So I need to grab something real quick because this is what we need on the back bar. Moving on to the back bar, we do have Trap Beast or Rearming Trap. Rearming Trap basically allows you to keep uptime of Minor Force a lot better. So it lasts, it can last for 6 seconds, the ability, once activated, and it lasts for another 6 seconds after it goes off. So it'll fire and then resets itself, and you get 12 seconds of Minor Force from it. But it also does a decent amount of damage too, so it's a really good combination there. Next ability we have is Engulfing Flames. Exhale a Flaming Blast to enemies in front of you, dealing X flame damage with X flame damage over 10 seconds. Affected enemies take 10% more damage from all fire damage attacks. That's why we have the fire enchant on the dual wield. That's why we're using a lot of fire abilities. This would be better if you were using a fire staff, like I said, with a shock enchant. That does play better. But because of the way this build plays, that lightning staff works better on resource return. So moving on, we are using Blockade of Storms. This does a decent amount of damage. over time, and it can also have a chance of setting enemies off balance, which also can deal more damage to them. The next ability we have is Eruption. This does a lot of damage over time. It deals fire damage right up front, and then it deals damage over time. It's really good, and it's placeable. So you can actually place this wherever you want within a 28-meter range. So you can set it over there, or what have you. Next ability, Inner Light. Again, Max Magicka, the Major Prophecy. And then the final ability we have on our bar is Standard of Might. Standard of Might is the ability you're going to use most of the time. You're going to want this up all the time as much as possible, because it does do a lot of damage over time. It lasts for seconds, 17 seconds. It also applies Major Defile, which doesn't really help much in PvE, but it does do the damage over time. And then on top of that, the standing in the area where the banner is, you get 15% more damage done and damage reduction, and it's also a synergy, so it's really good for group orientated play. And that is the skills. We're going to go ahead and go on to the back bar, or onto the champion points, sorry. Champion points. So starting here in the red tree, we have 66 in the Ironclad. This reduces damage taken from direct damage attacks by 22%. Over here we have 52 into Thick Skin. This reduces damage taken from damage over time effects by 19%. We have 66 into Hardy, reducing damage from physical poison and disease damage by 13%. And Elemental Defender of 66, with reducing damage taken from Flame, Frost, Shock, and Magic damage by 13%. Moving on to the green tree, we have 56 into Warlord. This reduces break free costs by 20%. We have 35 in a Sprinter, reducing the cost to sprint by 20%, and in the middle is where things get kind of different. We have 43 into Mooncalf, increasing your stam recovery by 10%, 43 in Arcanus, giving you 10% magic recovery, 43 into Tenacity. This gives you stamina and magic return on your heavy attacks by 10%. You don't heavy attack that much on your front bar. You're mostly light attack weighting. Moving on over here, we have 28 into Tumbling, reducing our dodge roll cost by 12%, and then 2 into Shadow Ward, reducing our block cost by 1%. Not necessary, but it still helps. Moving over here into the blue tree, we have 37 into Elfborn. This increases critical damage and critical healing done by 15%. We have 15 into Spell Erosion, increasing your spell penetration by 1465. 43 into Elemental Expert, increasing your Flame, Frost, Shock, and magic damage by 10%. We do have 23 into Master at Arms, increasing your direct damage done with direct damage abilities or attacks by 10%. 43 into Mighty, increasing your physical, poison, and disease damage done by 10%. 37 into Thaumaturge, increasing your damage done with damage over time abilities by 15%. And then 37 into Precise Strikes, increasing critical damage and critical healing done with stamina abilities by 15%. And then on top of that, we do have 15 into Piercing, increasing your physical penetration by 1465. So overall, we have a very well-rounded CP setup and everything. I do want to show you guys this real quick so you guys can see what this thing really looks like at a good setup. So this is what this build looks like for weapon, like max stamina, as you can see. Weapon damage 4840. So you can get almost 5k weapon and spell damage out of this build because of how it works and everything. So you will be running a lot of weapon and spell damage, and it works out really well. The most I've been able to get out of this build on a rotation, when I have somebody else here applying like Major Breach and Major Fracture and some other things, I can actually get up to about 24k myself on DPS. Like playing Major Fracture, Major Breach, the Crusher Enchant, all that kind of stuff. You can get a decent amount of DPS out of this. In solo play, this build works amazing, like soloing overland content, playing in the open world, that kind of stuff, playing in delves, public dungeons, dolmens, all that. It works really good. In normal and veteran dungeons, it works really good as well. It's a really good DPS setup for it. In normal trials, it works really good. In veteran trials, that's where it's going to get kind of thrown off. And a lot of people in veteran trials want more DPS than 24 to 32k, depending on your rotation capabilities. But if you can pull the 32k, they do work really good in veteran as well. But that is the DK hybrid DPS build for Summerset. I do plan on releasing more builds this week. The next one I'm releasing is a Sork build, and then I have a, besides the Sork, I also have 2 other builds coming out to add to that. So keep an eye out for those. I have the Nightblade and the Warden after that, and then the Templar will be the final hybrid I release. So it's going to be really interesting to see your guys' thoughts and opinions on those. But this is hybrid week, so I'm going to be doing a lot of hybrids. I'm also going to be releasing, starting this week, my solo builds as well. And I'm going to be showing you guys those. And some of those are even hybrids now, so because they work out so well. But that's pretty much it for this build, guys. I hope you guys like it. It's a lot of fun creating. It's been a lot of fun creating builds for you guys and giving you guys some unique ideas that are not necessarily meta, but are close to it and kind of fun. So, but yeah. So if you like this, hit that like button. If you guys want to see more builds by me, you can hit that subscribe button. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.